The man who abandoned me because I couldn't have kids is about to see me 7 months pregnant with my new husband's baby. And yes, karma arrived exactly when it needed to. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Hannah Miller, and for 5 years I was married to a man who made me believe something was wrong with me. Ethan and I had started our marriage like most couples, full of hope, love, and plans for a future that included a family. At least, that was what I thought we both wanted. For the first year, things were good. We tried to have a baby naturally, and when nothing happened, I didn't panic. I thought it was normal. But Ethan changed fast. He began pointing out how long it had been since we started trying. He made comments like, "Maybe you're too stressed," or "Maybe your body just isn't ready." At first, I brushed it off, telling myself he was frustrated, not cruel. But his tone shifted. He started talking to me like I had failed him personally. Whenever a friend or cousin announced a pregnancy, he would look at me with this cold disappointment, as if I was the reason our lives weren't moving forward. When we finally went to a fertility doctor, the results weren't clear. Nothing pointed directly to me, nothing pointed directly to him. The doctor said it could be timing, stress, or simply unexplained infertility. But Ethan ignored every word except the part that allowed him to blame me. He told me afterward that the doctor was being polite, and that anyone could see the issue was with me. I remember sitting in the car after that appointment, staring at the dashboard, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. I wanted to believe my husband would support me, but I already felt something breaking inside me. Over the next year, his distance grew. He stopped coming home on time. He slept farther away from me. He barely touched me unless it was for another attempt to get pregnant. And whenever those attempts failed, he acted like I had ruined his life. I felt ashamed of myself, even though I didn't know what I had done wrong. I cooked, cleaned, worked, and tried to stay positive, but nothing softened him. His mother didn't help. She always had sharp comments ready, reminding me that a woman's worth is in her home and her children. Ethan never defended me. Sometimes he even agreed. I spent nights crying quietly so he wouldn't hear. I felt trapped, stuck in a marriage where love had slowly turned into pressure and blame. Every morning I woke up wondering if this was all my life would ever be. I tried holding the marriage together, telling myself it was just a phase, but deep down, I sensed something darker coming. What I didn't know was that the betrayal waiting for me would change everything. Ethan's pressure only grew worse after that. He told me we needed more tests, more procedures, more blood work, more scans. It felt endless. Every week there was something new he wanted me to sign up for. He acted like my entire value depended on a report from a lab. I kept hoping he would come with me, even once, just to show he cared. But every time I asked, he made an excuse. He said it wasn't his place, or that real men don't sit in waiting rooms for women's issues. He said it like it was a joke, but the way he looked at me made it clear he meant every word. When we got home from these appointments, he didn't comfort me or ask how I felt. Instead, he would shake his head, saying things like, "I don't know what else to do if your body won't fix itself." Hearing that over and over again chipped away at me. I started second-guessing my own health, my own worth. I tried explaining that the doctors didn't find anything wrong, but he would twist my words and make me feel like I was making excuses. He acted like I was stopping us from having a family on purpose. His distance became worse. He stopped eating dinner with me. He came home late almost every night, claiming work was stressful, but he never used to stay out like that. When he did come home, he barely talked to me. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, answering me with short, empty responses. The warmth he used to show me was completely gone. I felt like a stranger living in the same house. I tried asking him if something was wrong, if he was upset with me for any reason besides the fertility issues, but he always made me feel like I was being dramatic. He said I was overthinking everything, and that I should focus on the real problem, which, according to him, was me. Every attempt I made to talk turned into him acting irritated or ignoring me altogether. His mother, Linda, made everything worse. She visited often and never missed an opportunity to make me feel small. She'd ask if I had good news yet, and when I didn't, she would sigh loudly, shaking her head as if I had disappointed the entire family. Once, when Ethan stepped away, she leaned close to me and said, "A real woman gives her husband children. Maybe Ethan needs someone who can continue the family line." Hearing that felt like a punch to the stomach. I stood there frozen, unable to defend myself. When I told Ethan what she said, he shrugged and said his mother came from a different time and I should stop taking things so seriously. But he didn't defend me. Not once. I felt myself slipping into a heavy exhaustion, the kind that sits deep in your bones. I woke up tired. I went to bed tired. My mind felt heavy from the constant blame. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like I was living in a place where every breath had to be careful. Every word had to be small. And still, I kept trying, holding on to a marriage that was quietly tearing me apart, unaware that an even bigger betrayal was waiting just ahead. Everything finally made sense the night I found out about Sophie Grant. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was just trying to do something normal, wash Ethan's work shirts, when I found a restaurant receipt in his pocket. It wasn't the restaurant that bothered me. It was the date, the time, and the fact that he had told me he was working late that night. When I asked him about it, he didn't even try to hide anything. He just stared at me, completely calm, and said, "Yeah, I went out. And honestly, we need to talk." My heart was already pounding. I felt something sink in my stomach before he even continued. Then he said her name, Sophie, a woman he worked with. A woman he had mentioned a few times in passing, calling her funny or talented. But I never thought twice about it. Hearing him say he'd been seeing her was like every piece of blame he'd thrown at me suddenly had a new meaning. He had been checked out long before he admitted it. What hurt even more was how emotionless he was. There was no guilt, no hesitation. He sat there like he had been waiting for the right moment to free himself. And then he said the words that would stay with me for years. "I deserve a future with a real family." It felt like someone had pulled the air out of my lungs. I asked him what that meant, what he was trying to say, and he didn't soften it. Not even a little. He looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm wasting my life with someone who can't give me kids." I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't even have the strength to cry right then. I just sat there frozen, staring at the man I had loved for 5 years, realizing he saw me as nothing more than a broken tool he was done using. Within a week, he filed for divorce. No counseling, no discussion, no chance to breathe. He wanted everything done quickly. He acted like I was holding him back from his real future, and Sophie was waiting for him to start it. He didn't try to make things fair or kind. The way he moved through the process, cold and focused, made it obvious he had been preparing for this long before he told me. When the paperwork came, he didn't even sit with me. He left it on the kitchen table with a note telling me to sign when I was ready to move on. I knew he wanted me to do it fast so he could announce his new relationship without looking like the bad guy. I knew arguing wouldn't change anything. My voice had stopped mattering to him long ago. I signed the papers quietly. There were no goodbye words, no fight for the house, no request for anything. I packed my clothes into 2 suitcases, walked out of the home I had tried so hard to hold together, and closed the door behind me. When I stepped outside, the air felt heavy, and so did my heart. I didn't know where my life was heading, but I knew it could no longer stay tied to a man who saw me as less than human. I left everything behind, except my pain, and hoped someday it would hurt less than it did in that moment. Moving into my small apartment in Denver felt like starting life from zero. It wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom with old carpet and thin walls. But it was the first place in a long time where I could breathe without feeling judged. I spent the first few nights sitting on the floor because I didn't even have a couch yet, wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. Some mornings I woke up feeling empty, other days I felt angry, but most days I felt tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. I knew I wouldn't survive if I didn't get help, so I started therapy. At first, I could barely talk without crying. My therapist told me I had been living under constant pressure for years, and my mind was finally letting go of the weight. Slowly, with every session, I felt pieces of myself coming back. During that time, I threw myself into work. I was a medical receptionist at a cardiology clinic, and the routine helped me feel stable. Checking in patients, answering phones, scheduling appointments, it kept my mind busy. I liked being useful again. That's where I met Dr. Lucas Reed. He wasn't like most doctors who rushed through their day with clipped words and full schedules. Lucas moved with a calmness that made people around him relax. He was polite to everyone, from the janitor to the oldest patient. He never raised his voice, never acted like someone owed him anything. He noticed the sadness I tried hard to hide. At first, it embarrassed me, but he never asked questions in a way that felt intrusive. If he saw me struggling to focus, he'd simply say, "Take your time, Hannah," or, "You don't have to rush." Those small moments meant more than he realized. One morning, after a long night of crying, I must have looked worse than usual because he gently said, Rough day? I nodded, expecting him to end the conversation there, but he gave a soft smile and said, "Whatever it is, I hope it gets easier for you." It wasn't pity. It wasn't judgment. It was kindness. And that alone made my chest feel lighter. We slowly became friends. Nothing more, nothing confusing. Just two people who talked during lunch breaks or shared stories between patients. He never flirted or hinted at anything. He didn't push me to open up, but he made it easy to. The more we spoke, the more I realized how different he was from Ethan. Lucas listened when I talked. He didn't twist my words or dismiss my feelings. He didn't blame me for things out of my control. He respected me in a way I hadn't felt in years. There were days when I still cried in my apartment, still wondered why I wasn't enough for Ethan, still felt the sting of his words. But being around someone like Lucas reminded me I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I wasn't the problem. For the first time in a long while, I felt a small piece of strength returning. I didn't know where my life was heading, but I didn't feel completely alone anymore. And that tiny bit of hope was the first real step toward healing. As the months passed, something in me slowly began to settle. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I wasn't drowning anymore. Therapy helped, work helped, and time helped more than anything. I stopped waking up every morning thinking about what I had lost. Instead, I began noticing the small things I still had: quiet mornings, my own place, the feeling of peace that came from not being criticized in my own home. Bit by bit, confidence returned in ways I didn't expect. Lucas played a bigger part in that than he ever realized. He never tried to fix me, never tried to pull me out of my sadness before I was ready. He simply showed up with steady patience. When I finally told him about my marriage, the blame, the divorce, he didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with this calm understanding, like he could see the strength I didn't know I had. He told me gently that nothing about what happened had been my fault. Hearing those words from someone who meant them made something inside me unlock. Over the next several months, our friendship deepened. We talked more often, shared lunches, and sometimes he would walk me to my car after late shifts. I felt safe around him, and that safety made room for something I hadn't felt in a long time: trust. I didn't jump into anything. I was scared, unsure if I could handle another heartbreak. But Lucas never rushed me. When he finally asked me out, he did it in the quietest, most respectful way, giving me space to say no without feeling any pressure. I said yes. Dating him felt nothing like my past. With Ethan, everything had been heavy: expectations, stress, criticism. With Lucas, everything felt gentle. We went at my pace. If I needed time, he gave it. If I needed space, he understood. When I had nights where the memories came back and I doubted myself, he listened without telling me to get over it. He reminded me again and again that I wasn't difficult or broken. I was someone who had been hurt, and healing takes time. I didn't realize how much I had grown until one day I caught myself laughing. Really laughing. The kind that comes from deep inside, the kind I hadn't felt in years. It surprised me, but it also reminded me that I was finally becoming myself again. Months later, when Lucas asked me to marry him, it didn't feel rushed or scary. It felt right. He didn't plan a big proposal or anything fancy. It was just the two of us in my apartment, sitting on the couch, talking about life. He told me he loved me, not for what I could give him, but for who I was. I believed him without hesitation. We married quietly at a courthouse with only 2 witnesses. No big celebration, no pressure, no expectations. Just promises made with honesty and love. As we walked out holding hands, the world felt different. Lighter. Warmer. For the first time in years, I felt safe, truly safe. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally trusted the person standing beside me. And for the first time, I trusted myself too. A few months into our marriage, life felt calm in a way I wasn't used to. I was still getting used to the idea that peace didn't mean something bad was coming. When I missed my period, I didn't think much of it. Stress still came and went, and my cycles had always been a little unpredictable. I brushed it off, telling myself not to overthink anything. I didn't want to feel that old panic, the one that used to hit me whenever pregnancy was even mentioned. But then another week passed. And another. I tried to stay calm, but there was a tiny part of me, way in the back of my mind, that whispered something I didn't dare believe. One morning, when Lucas left early for the hospital, I finally took a test. I set it on the counter and walked away, trying not to look at it too soon. My hands were shaking. I kept telling myself it would be negative, that it had to be, because anything else would make everything I had been told for years crumble. When I finally looked, the result hit me so hard I had to grab the counter to steady myself. Positive. I checked again. And again. It didn't change. My knees almost gave out. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the tiny lines that were about to turn my whole life upside down. But this time in a way I had never imagined. When Lucas came home, I didn't know how to tell him. I held the test in my hand, my heart pounding, and when he saw my face, he rushed to me, thinking something was wrong. I handed him the test without speaking. He stared at it and then looked at me with this wide, stunned smile. Instead of shouting or jumping around, he pulled me into the softest hug and whispered, "Are you okay? How do you feel?" His first concern wasn't the baby, it was me. That alone brought tears to my eyes. We went to the doctor together. Sitting in the exam room made memories I didn't want come flooding back, but Lucas held my hand through the whole appointment. When the ultrasound showed a heartbeat, I felt something warm spread through my chest, a mix of shock, joy, and something like disbelief. The doctor confirmed everything was normal. No health issues. No complications. Nothing wrong with me. Hearing that almost broke me. All those years I had been blamed, criticized, and pushed into test after test. And the truth was that I had never been the problem. I felt a wave of emotions hit me all at once. Relief, pain, anger, and sadness for the version of myself that had cried in secret, thinking she wasn't enough. Lucas understood without me saying a word. He just held me, letting me cry until I could breathe again. He didn't try to compare or judge or pretend to know how I felt. He simply stayed by my side, making sure I never felt alone. That night, lying next to him, I rested my hand on my stomach and whispered to myself, "It was never me." And for the first time since my old life fell apart, I felt a sense of closure beginning to form. Quiet, steady, and long overdue. By the time I reached 7 months, my whole world felt different. I was finally showing, and every morning when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized, someone strong, steady, and genuinely happy. My belly was round, my skin clearer than it had ever been, and there was a calm joy in me that I thought I would never feel again. Lucas made the pregnancy easier in every way. He came to every appointment, cooked for me when I felt tired, and talked to the baby every night like he was already a father. I felt safe, loved, and at peace. One afternoon, Lucas encouraged me to attend a charity event at the hospital. It was a simple gathering, nothing big, but he thought it would be good for me to get out, meet people, and feel confident. I agreed, thinking it would be just another normal evening. I dressed in a soft blue dress that fit comfortably over my belly, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to hide anything. Everything was going smoothly until I noticed a familiar voice behind me. I froze before I even turned around. When I finally looked, I saw Ethan and Sophie. They were standing near the entrance, smiling and greeting people. Sophie looked the same as always, perfect hair, perfect smile, but noticeably not pregnant, despite the rushed engagement everyone had heard whispers about. Ethan, on the other hand, looked older, tired, and a little restless. The moment his eyes landed on me, his expression cracked. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. His gaze dropped to my stomach, and shock washed over his face like he'd seen something impossible. I felt my heart slam against my ribs, but I held my posture. I wasn't the same woman he had walked away from. I turned to leave the room, needing even a few seconds to breathe, but Ethan followed quickly, ignoring Sophie calling his name. I stepped into the hallway, and he caught up to me, his voice low but frantic. "Hannah, what is this? How are you pregnant?" I didn't answer. I didn't know him anything. But he kept going, panic rising in his voice. "Is it real? Are you using a donor? Did you do some kind of treatment?" The disbelief in his tone felt like another insult layered on top of all the years he spent blaming me. He stared at my stomach like it was something that couldn't possibly make sense. Before I could speak, Lucas appeared beside me. He placed one steady hand on my back, positioning himself slightly between us. His calmness alone made my breathing steady again. Ethan's eyes flickered between us, realizing very quickly who Lucas was. Lucas didn't raise his voice or posture aggressively. He simply said, "You're upsetting my wife. You need to step back." The word wife made Ethan stiffen. His face tightened, not just with surprise but with something bitter underneath. He looked at Lucas, then at me, then at my belly again, still trying to process what he was seeing. Sophie finally caught up, looking confused and annoyed, but Ethan didn't even notice her. He looked lost, shaken, and completely thrown off balance. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one standing small and hurt. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't folding inward. I stood there with my hand resting on my belly, Lucas beside me, and strength filling the space where fear used to live. Ethan's world was breaking apart in front of him, but mine was finally whole. Ethan stood there, staring at me like he was trying to make sense of something impossible. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady, and said exactly what I had been holding inside for years. "Ethan," I began, the doctor confirmed it. "I never had any fertility problems. Nothing was wrong with me. All those tests, all those years of blame, it was never me." He opened his mouth, then closed it, like he couldn't find words. I continued, my voice calm but firm. "Maybe you left the wrong person. Maybe the problem wasn't me at all." I watched him slowly go pale. His face lost color, as if the truth was hitting him harder than any argument ever could. I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. His new fiancée, Sophie, had not been able to get pregnant, and suddenly everything he had assumed about me, about his perfect future, was crumbling. The life he thought he had built without me was not as perfect as he had imagined. For a moment, he just stared at my belly, and I could see the panic flicker behind his shock. He opened his mouth again, trying to say something, but no words came out. It was as if he suddenly understood that his judgments, his cruelty, and his decisions had been based on lies he told himself. Before he could recover, his mother, Linda, appeared behind him. She had followed, probably wanting to lecture me or shift blame as she always did. "Hannah, don't think you can make him feel guilty. You're still the one who couldn't give him children." "You," she started, but Lucas stepped forward without hesitation. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just stood there, calm and steady, his presence commanding. "Linda, you've done enough," Lucas said firmly. "Hannah doesn't owe you or Ethan an explanation. You need to leave." Her lips tightened, and she glanced at Ethan, probably hoping he would intervene, but he was frozen, still staring at me. Finally, she muttered something under her breath and stormed off, dragging her bitterness with her. Lucas turned to me and gently took my hand. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." As we walked away, I felt a sense of liberation unlike anything I had experienced before. I didn't need to argue, prove myself, or fight for recognition. The truth had already spoken louder than any words. Ethan had finally seen the reality he refused to accept for years, and I was free from his judgment at last. I glanced down at my belly, feeling the baby move, and realized that the life growing inside me was the ultimate answer to all the pain I had endured. The love and care that Lucas and I shared, and the family we were creating, was real, strong, unshakable. For the first time, I walked away knowing that I didn't just survive betrayal. I had moved on stronger, wiser, and finally untouchable by the people who once tried to make me feel small. A few weeks after the charity event, Ethan started showing up in my life again, but this time it wasn't in a subtle way. First, he came to the clinic where I worked, lingering near the reception desk and pretending to ask about forms, just so he could see me. His eyes were frantic, searching, like he was trying to find the old Hannah he had once taken for granted. Finally, he cornered me in the parking lot after my shift. His voice was low, desperate. "Hannah, please. I made a huge mistake. Sophie left me after everything came out. He paused, swallowing hard. "I just want another chance. I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you." I listened quietly, letting the words hang in the air. My chest tightened, but I refused to let the fear or old pain creep back in. He had no idea how much damage his betrayal had caused or how much I had rebuilt since leaving him. "I'm sorry, Ethan," I said finally, my voice calm but firm. "But this isn't about forgiveness. This is about my life now. And my life doesn't include you anymore." He took a step closer, eyes pleading, but I didn't flinch. "Think about it," he said. "We can fix this. We can be happy again." I shook my head. Happiness isn't about going back to someone who hurt you. Happiness is about moving forward. You can't take what I've built, and you can't have the life I have now. He opened his mouth again, but I didn't let him speak. I turned, walking to my car with Lucas waiting a few steps behind. I didn't need to explain anything else. The look on Ethan's face said it all: confusion, anger, disbelief. He couldn't understand that my strength, my peace, and my happiness weren't things he could steal or manipulate. Later, I learned from a mutual acquaintance that Sophie had indeed left him after realizing he had lied about everything, and suddenly his perfect future wasn't perfect at all. He had built a life on assumptions, on blaming others, and now he was left facing the consequences of his own mistakes. That's when I truly realized my revenge didn't have to be violent or mean. I didn't need to yell, humiliate, or seek revenge in ways that could hurt me too. My revenge was simpler, stronger, and far more satisfying. It was living my life fully, freely, and happily without him. I had Lucas, who loved me without conditions. I had a baby on the way, a little life growing that he would never touch. I had peace, safety, and love, all things he had denied me for years. Walking through my apartment that evening, feeling the baby move and Lucas holding my hand, I smiled quietly. My life had become my revenge, and it was perfect. Ethan's presence in my past no longer mattered. His mistakes didn't define me, my happiness did. For the first time, I understood what true victory felt like. It wasn't bitterness or anger. It was the quiet, steady joy of a life rebuilt stronger than the one he had tried to break. The day I went into labor, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves unlike anything I had ever experienced. Lucas stayed by my side the entire time, holding my hand, encouraging me, and reminding me to breathe. Every contraction, every moment of pain, was softened by his calm presence. He never left me alone for even a second, and I realized how much I had come to rely on him. Not out of fear, but out of trust and love. Hours later, I finally heard the first cry of my baby. A healthy little boy, strong and perfect. The sound filled the room and immediately made all the fear, all the heartache from the past, feel like it belonged to a world I no longer lived in. Lucas held our son first, gently placing him in my arms. I stared down at his tiny hands, his soft skin, and for the first time in years, I felt complete. Life after that was a blur of sleepless nights, gentle smiles, and quiet moments of gratitude. Lucas never complained, never faltered. He fed, changed, and soothed our son as much as I did. We shared every little triumph and challenge together. I felt love surround me in a way I had never known was possible. A few weeks after the birth, a letter arrived. Ethan had written it himself. I didn't open it at first, unsure if I wanted to read another attempt at justification, another plea for forgiveness. Eventually, curiosity and a quiet sense of closure made me look. He wrote about his regrets, his mistakes, and how he realized too late what he had thrown away. He begged me to respond, to give him a second chance. I folded the letter carefully and put it aside. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I had nothing left to say. His words didn't matter anymore. I had already moved past him, past his cruelty, past the years I had spent doubting myself. I had a family, a loving husband, and a life built on trust, patience, and respect. That was all that mattered. Holding my son one quiet evening, I whispered softly, "You are the life they said I would never have." Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer relief and joy of knowing I had survived, thrived, and finally reclaimed my story. Looking at Lucas beside me, smiling at our baby, I felt a deep sense of peace. I wasn't broken. I had only been with the wrong man. Everything Ethan had told me I was incapable of, everything he had blamed me for, had been a lie. I had built a life that proved it. In that moment, I finally closed the chapter on Ethan. No anger, no revenge, no lingering pain, just closure. My future was mine, built on love, not blame. I held my baby close, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and knew that this was what happiness truly meant. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free, and I knew that nothing, and no one, could take that away from me.